So tonight, I would like to open the public hearing on the proposed changes to the sewer rates. I would now like to open tonight's public hearing to accept public comment on the proposed changes to our sewer rates. The public hearing was formally noticed in the New London Day earlier this month. Are there any members of the public who would like to provide any comments on the proposed changes to our sewer rates?
So I think we have just staff and consultant online.
Is there any presentations or this is all?
We will have a presentation. We did it last month, but we will have a brief presentation by Brent Terry a little later in the agenda.
If, after all, there are no comments, so I will not close tonight's public hearing and resume our board meeting for tonight. Next will be on the agenda is a 15-minute public comment period. Are there any members of the public here in person or on the line who would like to address the board? And I'd like to remind anyone who would like to speak tonight that this is a time for public comment, not a discussion or back and forth and to lead board members. Any issues raised by the public during this period will be considered by the board in consultation with the staff at the appropriate time. To be respectful of everyone's time this evening, any comments should be limited to 3 minutes.
We do not have anyone to the point.
That will go to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes. I'll now accept the motion to approve the minutes of the last regular meeting of the NTP Board and Sewer Authority meeting on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025.
So
A motion is made by Bob, seconded by Stu. Is there any discussion? I will abstain because I wasn't here on the June meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Abstentions? The motion passes. Next is information updates provided to the board prior to tonight's meeting. Are there any questions for Chris or the staff on the materials that were provided in the board pack this last week? I have a couple. Okay. Well, motion, please. Do you have any?
I don't think I had it.
How are the reservoirs?
What? Larry's right here.
82%. I have a feeling it's another fall drought.
It was, the season started good and July was higher than normal, but, we're right to normal.
So slow down.
August has been hard.
Stuff like 82%.
Thank you. And thanks for getting back to me on that. For a long extension. The only thing I wanted to bring up is, because I wasn't here, Jim was at a terrible accident that was on Walton Avenue where the guys in the trench. And I just hope that, we're on top of all that stuff. I know that would be some very good, aggressive work proceedings. But even if there are contractors, I noticed, when they first started the job up on, Voorhees Hill Road, or Voorhees Street, they didn't have shoring in the trench, and they were down, at least 6 feet in the beginning. And they called Mary Lou and put, shoring up. But it's important, I think, to you don't realize that, that can result in terrible accident.
All contractors are responsible for safety. They are in charge. But if we do see something, we will alert and.
I was wondering, I was looking at the strategic plan, there's no way we can put in there, that's destroyed, that's not the contract. The contract is required to have their own safety program.
Absolutely. That's part of our bid package and it's reviewed by city officials and our team. But we are not out there 24/7 watching what they're doing. And, this one accident where the fatality happened, that was after hours and we don't control what happens after hours, never mind during,
That wasn't even a huge job, was it?
it was a sewer. It was a sewer lateral.
Okay. All right, are there any questions on the financial update? Or on the leadership team template? Any questions by board members?
Yeah, I've got, I don't know if you mentioned this briefly, but, and maybe we need to do this in executive session, but I know CMEC is looking at resolution of the generator at the sewer treatment plant. And can you update us on that now or in executive
Well,
session?
Matt Ross will have a slide on that, and I can go into more detail at the conclusion of this slide.
Okay, but in executive session or?
No, that's in regular session.
Oh, okay, fine.
Any further questions? No. Item 7 is strategic discussions and presentations. The first is Brendan Terry. Is going to talk about the proposed changes to the sewer rates.
The board, and this is basically a summary of what we presented back in the June meeting. And Brendan will go through an overview of what we have and then open up the discussion with questions.
Great. So just wanted to review where we are with the rate changes, proposed rate changes for sewer rates. So effective November 1st, 2025, MPU is proposing to adjust sewer rates. These sewer rates were developed through a cost of service study with our consultants, Baker Tilly. Been working with us for the past couple of years. They're online as well. If you have any questions, and these rates, effectively balance key financial metrics over time. The proposal of 17.3% increase is consistent with what our forecast was last year, and where we expect it to be this year. And I guess next slide, please. So as far as the recommendation goes, we're still continuing to recommend a single year rate change due to the impacts of the wastewater treatment plant project and all the variables associated with it. The overall 17.3% increase is made up about 16.3% increase to customer charges, a 17.5% increase in volumetric charges. The customer charges, the increases vary by the size of the meter. And once again, this is consistent with last year's analysis and the forecast. We anticipate that the overall impact to your average 5/8 inch meter residential customer to be about 53 cents a day or just below $16 a month increase. The rate increases will balance, our key financial metrics while also minimizing the impact to customer bills over time, and while still moving rates towards cost of service. And then that last note, still promotes financial stability and minimizing financial risk for the utility. This is just a quick slide of the rates that are being proposed. You'll see the different meter sets or the rates on the left, which is meter size, the current meter charges in the middle. We're proposing meter charges to go. And then towards the bottom, where you see the volumetric and the effluent charge, that's the per CCF charge, where it is today versus what we're proposing.
Yeah, we bill sewer on water meters. That's the size of the water.
So as far as the schedule, where we are moving forward, so tonight was the public hearing. We do need a vote by the September 23rd meeting. Subsequently, 5 days later, we will publish legal notices in the paper in order for rates to be effective on November 1st, 2025.
And the board has the ability to vote tonight or next month. We just have to have it by next month to meet the November date. So, and that's at the discretion of.
But, given the project that we're doing, we don't really have an option.
No, it was just if you wanted questions answered, if you wanted more input from the public, which, there's no input here today.
Well, who's paying it up 17%?
Yes,
I mean, you get squeezed at the grocery store, squeezed at the pump, squeezed everywhere we go. And now we're gonna push this to a point where there's gonna be more people that are having problems paying their bills.
Well, the reality
when we
is,
signed on for a $200 million project, these were the projections we signed on for. And
we were legally mandated to do it by the state, so, and the state is providing
some.
75% of the money, something like that.
More like 36.
36.5% grants.
Yeah,
The same money, all of it, it's just they're loaning us the other.
But more than the state normally allows because of the help of Senator Austin, getting us additional funding for this project.
I know that, you've been pursuing more money. Any news on that front?
So we're not, since last year, Chris, you can talk about, I know we're meeting with Senator Austin in a couple of weeks, but you can talk about next year.
She's reached out to us, and she advocated right up to the very final hours of the session, see if there's a way to find another $8, $10, $12 million. She understands the need, she understands the impact, obviously, in a distressed municipality. The challenge is there are a lot of other competing interests, and we've done very, very well in Hartford in terms of increase a higher level of grant versus loan calculation for this project. We're going to continue to work on it. She knows that we want to talk about it. She's actually reached out to us. Usually we meet with them a month before the session. She reached out to us at the end of the session, saying, when can I come in and talk about all the projects that are going up? And I want to hear more about the progress of the construction and what the value of $10 million, $12 million might be for customers, because it's important to her. So it's a challenge, but we're doing everything we can.
The reality of the situation is rates are going up, are going to double essentially over the period. So we finance this.
The good news, if there is good news, the sewer is the smallest part of the bill.
Yeah.
It's when you combine with the other rates, the poor service customer or MPU is paying considerably less than a poor service utility customer in Ledger or Montville or Preston. Our rates, electric rates being that much more competitive, help people save money over the course of a month. It's difficult, yes, and we have not had, I'm not aware, and Mary Lou Shiley could correct me, of a single customer that's called in to complain about their sewer rate over the past 2 years when we've done these bigger increases. I think we did 8.5%, we did 17% last year, 17% this year, but we haven't had a call about it because it's, relatively speaking, the smallest part of your bill, and it's $4 a week. It's a challenge, but it's not $300.
Yeah.
People are either, if they're noticing it, it's not creating a headache yet. I don't know how much longer that's going to continue, but so far it's gone pretty smooth.
Although I think the other side of that coin is that if you look at the demographics of sewer customers in Norwich as opposed to Norwich in general, the sewer customers are not doing as well.
Right.
It tends to be rural sections of the city.
And the landlords typically pay the bill in those poorer sections of the city.
We ranked third as the economically distressed community as of December 24th, so right up to the close time. But have we been educating the public on these increases on Facebook or on the website?
So we did, the November 1st, when the rates are adjusted, we always do something on our website, and then we'll do a small blurb in our newsletter that comes out 4 times a year. And I mean, the bills are changing every month, so people are aware of that.
We do proactive communications.
Well,
Okay.
it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise. We want to make sure it's not a surprise.
Well, the fact that nobody's,
That's right. My parents thinking the same thing. They're not even showing up to this meeting.
The public hearing has to raise.
That was, rates were published in the newspaper.
I didn't exactly something. So, yeah, just to echo what other people are saying, we haven't had the public down here screaming at it for several years, and that's a good thing. And Mark has been doing a good job, but also that as much as these are increases, they're not, we hope they're not breaking anybody's bank. People recognize that we're moving it for unnecessary reasons. So that stays.
Okay, I'll do the next one. We're gonna have a presentation by Matt on the wastewater.
So this is the monthly update on where we are in construction, but also will go into the wastewater generator that was a CMEC asset housed at our site that we are going to be taking ownership.
Most of these photos are from the end of last week, but just an aerial of really the whole plant from south to north, kind of at the end of Falls Ave up to the very tip. You can see the landfill begin to grow in. Next slide. This is just a shot really of, again, the north end of the site, it's looking south. Again, landfill's about 2/3 capped and is actively growing now. Next slide, please. We are probably 2 to 3 weeks away from sending sludge for the first time to our new thickened sludge storage tanks. On the left is just an aerial again. Really, the outside of the structure is nothing glorious to look at. It's a lot of concrete, but the 2 photos on the right are kind of the completed interior gallery spaces, just to give you a better feel of the building as it comes to life. So again, this is a substantial change in our solid handling practice. Norwich has been digesting and dewatering sludge for over 70 years, and won't be doing that anymore. Next slide, please. Behind thickened sludge, toward the end of September, early October, we have our first 2 new secondary clarifiers coming online. Clarifier 3 and 4, kind of up to the northeast part of the site, a little bit beyond where the existing plant sat. This is just an aerial view of the 2 tanks. A pump station between the 2 tanks we'll look at in a second, and it's difficult to see in the image, but some very large diameter yard piping with, I'll say, a substantial amount of trench boxes for that work. Next slide. So between the 2 clarifiers, you can see at the top of the photo is really a 2-story building. The first floor is electrical and equipment handling space. It's a nice new masonry building, and then down below grade is another pump gallery. This is for the wastewater lines in the room. It's really a RASWAS pump station, so it's completely dedicated to the 2 new clarifiers and serving the biological needs of the process. Next slide, please. Behind those 2 tanks, so we're kind of, as you'll gather, we're really nearing the first completion of the first phase of the project. There's a lot coming to life in the next 6 weeks. So our first new primary settling tank is almost, well, yeah, a few weeks away from being upgraded. It's really keeping the existing shell of the basin and all new mechanicals, electrical, internal. So the left is just a view of that, and then we do have a new submersible scum pump station that will serve the 2 primary tanks for the upgraded plant. Next slide. I think when we were here last, I showed you a photo of some steel reinforcing lying in the bottom of our what will become aeration tank 2. They are now actively pouring concrete in that tank, partitioning the process to, again, create the biological zones that we'll need to remove nitrogen from the plant. Next slide. This is another aerial shot of to the north or the top, starting to be the foundation of the new lab building for the plant. Really getting prepared. All the kind of sub-slab piping is in place and tested and inspected by the city and ready preparing for the foundation for the new lab, and the admin continues to kind of wring out the remaining PCBs from the foundation, but we do have structural steel on site now. That building will start to be erected in the near future, but still quite a bit away out from anybody occupying the spaces. One more slide, or yeah, one more slide. So this is just a nice aerial shot. It might not mean a lot to some people in the room, but sort of to the right are one existing chlorine contact tank that remains in service today and will remain in service through about this time next year. And then to the left of that, directly adjacent, is the second form of chlorine contact tank that is, again, being retrofitted, converted to UV disinfection. There's 2 parallel channels, one with lamps, so we can disinfect during disinfection season, and a bypass channel when we don't need the lights on. And then just to the northwest, or really the southeast, but in this photo to the northwest of that is a new effluent pump station. Again, we're increasing the capacity that the plant can accept from the collection system, reducing CSOs, and under certain conditions, we'll need to pump the effluent out like we do today. And then just a quick, again, look ahead. Not a lot changed here, but there's a bulk of activities really coming to fruition in the next 6 weeks. There's going to be a lot of new infrastructure being placed online. There is almost weekly training happening with our wastewater staff, operators and mechanics, from manufacturers to CDM Smith and others. And we are eager to start pushing flows in different directions. So the next slide is for the generator, but I'll take any questions you might have about the plant progress.
So Matt, do you know, Chris, if we're gonna have equipment outfitted for PFAS before testing at the lab?
Oh, testing. No, we are monitoring PFAS at the wastewater plant because the state has stated, actually in anticipation this summer, to issue a general permit. But our lab, most labs do not have the capability to analyze. There are very select labs that can perform those analyses. So we do the collection and the preparation, but the analysis is done completely outside.
Too many places that did it. I didn't know if that had changed.
No, there's only 12 to 20 in the eastern side of the United States. You have to be certified by EPA. and stuff like that.
So we're on track pretty much still with construction?
The project?
Yeah, with the project.
Yeah, I would say so. And again, we're getting through this first, what began last summer is a lot of demolish stuff.
Yeah.
Pour concrete, dig. Now you're actually seeing new infrastructure. We're going to put all that online, and then this winter, spring, next summer will be a lot more of, okay, let's demolish some more things. Let's pour some more concrete. Let's put some more piles in the ground. And maybe about a year from now, we'll see more new coming to life again.
But as we start commissioning new equipment, it's a big learning curve, and we're changing processes at the plant as we bring new processes on, taking new processes off. It's going to be a challenging time down there. This is probably the hardest time to be working at the plant. When we have a brand new plant, it's 100% done. Oh, life is great, but this interim is going to be quite the challenge.
Yeah, the whole UV disinfection system is gonna be all new.
No more chlorine and much better for the environment.
Right.
The other thing that happened since our last meeting is we had a very good meeting with DEEP. They came down, Kitty Dykes and senior staff for a tour of the plant. We provided the tour of the plant, answered questions, and had a little lunch, and very positive with the staff.
Tell them to send more money.
They know we're challenged. That was definitely communicated though.
Anything else? Okay. So Stu touched on this already, but again, essentially the backup power approach for the upgraded wastewater plant. Well, I'll say today, of course, there's a dedicated primary service from Falls Avenue, Circuit 614, and there's the standby generator. Diesel generator is also there for backup power for the plant. The design intent for the upgraded plant, for the reason that the generator building and the generator within that building are vulnerable to certain flooding conditions from the Yantic River. The state did not necessarily recognize that generator as a dedicated backup power source. So the design decision was to install or extend a second circuit to the wastewater plant. It'll be circuit 512 that will come underground through Falls Avenue into the plant, something I'm actively collaborating with our electrical staff on today. That work will begin probably toward the tail end of this year, and we're hoping to energize new equipment next summer. But related to some of the CMAQ happenings and the recommendation to suspend the diesel generator project, which includes the generator at the wastewater plant, and potentially CMEX's decision to sell that generator to NPU. Hopefully, I guess, outcomes potentially later this week. We have started to look at how can we better incorporate the generator into what would really become like a tertiary or third source of power for the plants. So through consultations with both EPA concerning permitting for the unit in a emergency only perspective, we have learned that the existing generator would be subject to new performance standards from the EPA. And in parallel, CAT, the manufacturer of the existing generator, confirmed that the unit today would not be able to meet the emissions requirements of those sort of performance standards. CMAQ had already taken the steps to look at both controls and you see the acronym SCR there, but we were really talking about the emissions from the unit on the order of collectively something around $1 million. We are, I guess, since then exploring what could be more cost-effective solutions for the emissions. And HO Penn will actually be visiting the plant later this week to talk about some alternatives that may reduce that $400,000 estimate for the emissions perhaps to something smaller, but remains to be seen. But as part of this effort, we have revisited the design load, electrical loads for the plant with the design engineer, C.D. Smith. They've given us full confidence that the generator has capacity to serve really all the duty equipment for the plant under, say, peak conditions, peak loading, peak flow, peak everything. So there's definitely value in pursuing this, and there are essentially feasible ways that this can be incorporated into the distribution for the new plant. Yes.
Good question. I guess I'm going to dumb it down for myself because I'm not the smartest guy here. Now, you're going to have a substation or a motor control center that's going to feed this critical equipment, correct?
The generator,
No,
the plant.
plant. How many feeders you got coming in?
We
Is
have,
your substation double-ended is what I'm going to ask.
we have two
Two
circuits.
feeds and a tie in between.
Yes.
Will stand.
Yeah.
Now, you say you're gonna bring in these two circuits, circuits 614 and 512. Those are the outputs of generators in those locations?
No, those are
Just
live.
additional feeds.
Yeah, and 614 serves the plant today.
Now, to size that generator, now, just for the critical areas, or are you gonna be able to handle the whole plant? Because if it's the whole plant, that's gonna be one big generator.
Jerry, this generator has been installed and being used for 20 years. This is just transferring from CMEC to us. As for ownership, it works now as a backup generator for the whole plant.
Okay, well,
It will be a backup generator for the new plants.
capacity there.
Yes,
That's what I'm asking.
yes, it is.
They have not conveyed that very well, but yes, we recently revisited this conversation with CDM Smith again, and their electrical engineers, the design consultant for the plant upgrade, and they've given us all the data to support that there's tremendous value in being able to retain this generator because it does have the capacity needed to, again, serve the plant under those peak everything conditions.
When you say we're going on environmental standards, I run over a dozen generators on a monthly basis. It's ozone and it have operations standards that I call deep. I have an ozone hotline I call. It tells me whether I can operate because we're under that, I forgot what they call it, some kind of community that does that. Now, when you install this thing, are you going to be running it, testing it, and following those guidelines?
So that we have to do. It's already installed, running, and everything else. We had to stop running it when the emissions failed. So now we need a new emission system on there. But we still, if we have an emergency, we can run it. If we have an ozone day, we're not gonna do a test on that.
So we buy this was a CMAQ asset.
So, yes, so it was when this was put in 20+ years ago, CMEC bought the 2 megawatt cat diesel. We installed it and did all the building and all the renovations in the fuel tank and everything else around this unit. And we did all the labor to install it. Now, CMEC has fully depreciated that asset. The risk management looked at it and said, okay, let's terminate this GG program for this unit. And we're recommending to sell it back to Norwich for market value. Tomorrow or Thursday in the CMEC meeting, this is going to be voted on by the board because the risk management group can only make a recommendation. And this will be reviewed on Thursday. And what is being proposed is being sold essentially for depreciated value of $1 plus the urea and a couple incidentals. So it's going to be $3,000, $4,000.
This was not part of the microgen, but it operated similarly, or was it?
This was operated in the ISO market, not behind the meter. There was an option of putting it into the microgen. They didn't not want to spend the $900,000.
But it was dispatched by ISO.
Correct. Not by the NOC at CMEC for behind the meter, which is what the team up there does now.
Right.
Just one other consideration for CMAC, which is contributing, I think, to us having a good opportunity here, is that if we don't want to buy the generator, CMAC has to remove it. And removal of the generator would be expensive. So they would much rather sell it at a reasonable price, considering it's fully appreciated to us, at a bargain price, quite frankly, to us, rather than pay extra money to have them go in and remove it.
There may be some used market value for a large generator like this, but when you look at what it would take for the labor to demo it, and if for whatever reason this does not work in the long run, which I pretty confident with Matt running this project, it will work well. But if something were to happen, we have the labor and ability to remove that engine and take out, do the demos.
Yeah.
We were the ones who installed it though.
If it's to be used for emergency only, is it just for the plant, or can it be used for emergencies in town as well?
Someday we could potentially look at a microgrid, but right now this is for the plant only.
So it may, except for periodic maintenance, it may never come on.
We will do a routine running of it, and
Once in a blue moon, right?
No, regular basis, maintained.
But you got, just for maintenance, so you got to fire it every once in a while.
We run ours.
Okay.
that's typically what we do for most of our generators.
But would you go through the process of tying in electrically and then shutting back off again, or just running for a few hours? Really?
We got some, we got some, we got underload, and we got others that can't disrupt the processes.
Yeah, we had issues here where the first time we tried this generator, I think we had a board meeting going on and it didn't come on, but we want to, whatever we can run over load, it really tests out the whole system.
Any other questions for Matt? Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
The next will be the Mary Lou, will do a presentation on the technology plan.
Actually, Greg Johnson. I'd like to introduce Greg Johnson and align with the strategic plan.
And when we did our strategic planning, the first two things that were really critical were the technology plan, and Greg will go into all the details of why that was so important. And the other was the ability to bond for the electric system. Both here tonight, and that's where most of the effort of the strategic, that first initiative on the strategic plan is all being done.
Thank you.
Well, hello there, and good evening. My name is Greg Johnson. I'm with Containment Technologies, and we were brought in, as Mary Lou said, to look at the technology infrastructure and to assess really the optimal way to do the things that need to be done. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now. Any questions you have, ask it as we go if you would like to. That's well received if you don't mind. So what I'll do is talk about the project goals and objectives we had for this session. When we went in, the things we discovered, and I'll do that in a very brief way just to make it timely for what we're doing here. Another piece of this, which we believe is very important, is the technology governance. So things can be self-perpetuated, so you don't have to call people like me and repeatedly. You can do it yourself and take it on. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about what you uncovered with this next steps and the timelines. So what we came in planning to do was to look at your infrastructure, the technologies you have in place, and how they were received, how well they were operating. But when you do that with this kind of a situation is technology is not something where you just put some computer in and it runs itself. It doesn't. So we have to look also at people and the way things are operated, the processes. So we came in and looked at that. And when we did, we look at it from a variety of ways, but one is from the top down. So we took a look at your strategic vision and strategic plan to make sure we were considering that as we went forward. And looked also eventually bottoms up to talk to the people and see where they felt. So we did a complete assessment of what you have with a gap analysis, as we call it, to basically come in and give you a list of the priorities and what we should be doing. Of course, when we do that technology plan, you've got to worry about the timing and which comes first, and are we ready for that? And of course, that was part of the assessment. But again, we focused on this technology governance, and we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the latter part of this conversation. This process that we did took about 6 months. We met with about 45 to 50 people within the organization, from senior management down to the people doing the work in the field. So it was a very thorough effort. It involved multiple engagements. So it was a very in-depth look, and we felt very strong about what we came out with from the meetings. If you wouldn't mind. One area I mentioned that we looked at was your strategic plan and the things that were in there. And we always want to make sure that the technology plan is aligned. And so these are two examples of things that we observed in the strategic plan that we considered. And that is that the customer service platform you have is running to the end of life. And so we're going to have to deal with that. And also your customer engagement philosophy, which I applaud, I think it's great, is something you wanted to focus on. So we needed to consider those kind of things. There's other elements of your strategic plan that we considered, but these are two of them. And if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. And there's another one here, and that's top one there, formalize a plan to build the culture and team building. And that's part of what we looked at with the governance. And we'll talk about that in the next little bit. Next slide. The way our process works, we start out getting this strategic vision, understanding that number one there, establish the overall overarching direction. We then did the gap analysis, and to do that, we meet with independent people, we meet with the middle level manager, we meet the workers, get their ideas and needs in, bring that to the team, and have continuous reviews of this as we go forward to see where you are and what you need to do. And we came up with a technology roadmap. We came up with a governance plan that I think is going to work here, and we're proposing that it be used, and you'll have another consultant or a consultant in the future that'll help you implement that and get that moving. Go to the next slide. When we did this, these are the types of initiatives we observed in our activities. The customer information and billing system, as we already talked about, is near end of life. The same thing is true with your finance and accounting application. That's got some problems, and we'll have to consider it. The SCADA application for electric is old and needs to be replaced. However, there's a lot of things going on in the electric world, as we've heard about from the industry, I'm sure, with renewables, distributed generation, with microgrids, with automation and the ability to remotely reconnect. So we're going to have to factor that into the equation. You've got an OMS application that's not working as well as it should. It doesn't integrate well. And frankly, it's an expensive application that we need to work on and to save money long term. So those were the big systems. There's a lot of other infrastructure that needs to be considered for doing things better, as we talked, or as I talked about a few minutes ago, with the processes and data flow and the way things work with your people. We want to make sure you have training and make sure that these technologies are implemented correctly. So there's a list of these items, and we roadmap those out. We'll see the roadmap in a minute or two. I'll pause there just in case you got any questions. So go to the next slide, please. So when we have each of these initiatives, this one's for the customer information and billing system. It's a very high-level approach to look at what we need to do, and all these pieces are part of what the team did. But I want to focus right here on that team members piece. And with these kind of systems, in the past, a lot of utilities would do these kind of systems where the billing coordinator would say, all right, let's just buy the system I want. But in the cases where you have now systems that are much more interconnected, where the billing system is now being used for service order management, it's being used for self-service for customers, it's being used for the data flow for your analysis and marketing, more and more people have to be involved. And so it's important that these kind of systems are considered strongly with the number of people that are going to get involved and touched by these systems. And it does increase the time that it takes to look at them. It increases the consideration of what's important and the priorities. So it's going to be some effort. These are going to be fairly rigorous tasks to go in and say, yeah, we need to replace this end-of-life system to do it properly. And part of this is related to that team building that was there. If you don't do that team building, then the persons that are not consulted or not involved with this, that have an active piece of it, think, what the heck am I doing here? I mean, I didn't be a part of that. And so it's going to be an effort that is going to take a lot of time with the people in your organization to do these systems as they go forward. This is not going to be trivial. It's going to take time on their part, and effort and diligence, and it will be a coordinated way to work forward. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide and back to the same thing, the finance and accounting system touches so many different places in your organization. We need to bring them in. We need to make them a part of what happens as those decisions get made and as the considerations for the priorities get brought into play. So those are the kind of things that we built with the team and we created. Go to the next slide. And these things, though, have to be considered in a team-oriented approach as we go forward. And governance is the way that we propose and the way we suggest that this gets done, to create that collaborative way of looking at things, to make sure that project management's processes are done properly and as an effective manner, to maintain the knowledge of who is the owner of the system, who's going to be the one that's the go-to, which data is the key data, so that we don't have a customer call in and get one piece of data that the AMI system has in it, and another piece of information that the customer information system has, which are slightly different for some good reason, but that's not where they need to be. The customer needs to have a single place to go So there's a standard approach that needs to be applied to make sure that your customers are served and your employees know how and when to do things. And this governance is a key piece of what we're talking about there. You can go to the next slide. And the approach we have is to create a technology planning team, much like the group of 10 to 12 people that we talked with, that perpetuates, that stays as a team as you go forward. And this technology planning team is a group of leading individuals in your organization, or maybe up and coming individuals that you want to have. It could be a standing team, and where we work with utilities that do this, it is a continuous standing team that rotates as time goes on, that's led, that has a more standardized approach for how things are done, which decisions are considered, how the reporting is done to make sure that they're on time. Somebody was asking earlier about, is this project on time and in budget? Well, that's the kind of thing that the technology governance team focuses on, and to make sure, and that reports back into senior leadership, so that there's that continuous flow of information and feedback to help this thing keep going in a positive way. One more slide. And the technology governance team has a set of rules, of guiding principles that they use to make sure that things go in a way that's supposed to be done, and that the core values that NPU has for their customers, for their employees, for the way they operate are maintained in this approach. And so feedback is there, and the long-term pieces are in place. And these core guiding principles were created by our team, by the NPU individuals. So this is not just some, offer that I've made. This is what the team wanted to have put in place for this team building and for keeping these technologies, which are going to occupy a lot of their time, operating and going in a way that's right for NPU and cost effective for NPU. Would mind going to the next? And this slide is the list of the technology. You may need to zoom in again.
Okay.
And so these technologies, you've got a lot. There's slightly a little bit. There's so we got the enterprise software upgrade. This is the customer information and billing system that's end of life. We've got to start soon. We projected this to start around now and to keep going. So these technologies and these initiatives are not short-term things that happen overnight. If we just stay on that enterprise software, we're talking about implementing and going out how far? Into 2028 if we started today. In fact, if we started a couple of months ago to get these systems in and operational. So we are at the cusp of having a little bit too late if we don't do it. So it's an important piece to keep going, and there's going to be a lot of time that the employee base in this company and external people, you're going to need some help with these projects because they are fairly sizable efforts. And they'll take a lot of IT support. They're going to take a lot of development with a team of teamwork support. And all at the same time, we're building this collaborative environment for the governance support. And so these are huge tasks going on and facing the utility. They are manageable, but they are big. And they're core to the operation because of what they are. These are your billing systems, your SCADA system for electric, your finance and accounting system, helping the AMI system continue to get better. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here and needs to be done soon. And I applaud the team and NPU for doing it in a formalized way, but I also want to make sure that as a board, you understand the level of effort that they've got to go through shortly to get these things done.
just to put these systems in perspective, when I started here in 1997, the SCADA, electric SCADA system had just been implemented shortly before that. They were still growing their teeth on that. In 2000, I was the operations lead on a technology team that put in the financial and the customer service interface in. So those systems are 25 and 30 years old. And we're at end of life. When we says end of life is, not only is it not the easiest for our teams to work with the systems because they're old, but they are, they're not gonna solve what we need for the future. So
how many projects are there that need to be prioritized or?
that was one of the big things the team did was the prioritization.
Well, the team prioritized, we prioritized these with the team. If you ask how many,
What do we do first? I mean,
well,
is there a plan to move forward with, say, the customer?
the way we've got these set up here, some of these are relatively simple within a group. There's what we call the AMI network upgrade. It's confined to within the AMI system. And it's relatively simple because it's not changing the way the data flows in and out to the billing and to operations. It's just a way to improve how it operates. So that kind of a system we put in early because it's done easily, not very expensive, and we can get it done. These other systems, we've had exploration here for the CIS billing and the SCADA, and those systems need to be done soon because of the timing of the end of life elements to it. Although, we'll have to be somewhat adaptive to what we find. You start getting into something, you peel the onion and you get into the layers of work. And your SCADA has some chances to become a little bit more complicated because of the changes outside of NPU's control, the smart grid, renewables, microgrids. So we have some risks there, but we at least need to do the exploration soon. So these exploration words here are, I'm sorry, these explorations are somewhat short, but we've got to start that one soon and that one. The other ones are a little bit easier because with elements up here, the asset management, this is really more of a discovery internally of what does it do and how does it work and how do we adapt it from one area to another. But these two are the ones we prioritize, the SCADA and enterprise software upgrade that have to be done. And so that's there, and for a lot of reasons, from the team as well as from the suppliers in your system.
Next year's budget, you will be seeing these projects built into the customer service or IT budgets.
So we can kept updated, monthly on progress.
Happy to do that.
Is this, this ERP software that we're using, is this like an AWS, is it like a NetSuite, or vendors that we use, or is it something that we have to custom build out just for municipalities?
Right. Well, the vendors themselves are built for utilities like yours. So these are off-the-shelf technologies. Now, some of them will use AWS or the other, cloud suppliers for their hosting tools, but we're not going to use, and we don't have to build anything, but we do have to select, and with the billing and finance and accounting system, there'll be a choice of a best in class that, that we like this accounting, finance and accounting application, and that customer information and billing, but there are some vendors that do both and can be a single solution that does it for us. So that's that exploration, is to decide, is there a single vendor that can be customer information, billing, finance, accounting, meter data management, customer facing portal. So all that portions that fit what we need here, or do we have to have a best of breed? And, you know, the best of breed adds a cost that you've got to continually maintain the connection between the two systems. The enterprise system, single system doesn't have that, but you may say, well, the customer information side is not as good as the other. So you'll have a trade-off, and that assessment we have to do. And that'll be a part of that exploration piece and eventually the selection piece to that. But it is off the shelf.
She's one of the, yeah, and she's already been connected to Mary Lou as we start our search. That's a billing system that several of the CMAC members use. And it's.
That's I'm gonna say a bundle approach. Their tool set, NISD,
Yep.
their pure bundle approach.
Oh, what I said,
Provide,
got you.
Yeah.
What I said to Chris, just in case, when I was at the NEPA conference, there was the young lady that sat at the table with us, we met, she connected with Chris and Jack.
yeah, and she's
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah, and I already directed her and Mary Lou has been in communication. That
So that's the discovery side.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And we've worked closely with NISC in the past. They're a very good provider and they might be a good fit here.
This is an area where good, better, and best in their situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one of these, we have to figure out our requirements as well.
Okay.
We do have an RFP out there currently to choose a partner for us to help lead us. We've done it how many years ago, Chris? And it took
was 2000.
many years ago. So that's not our forte. We need somebody to help us with this process. So we have an RFP out there currently. We have meetings scheduled meaning once the RFP closes, then we will have an interview selection process. We will choose a partner, so to speak, to help us lead us through this technology plan. Will it be more defined? Of course. But once again, it was important for us to take a look at what our needs were, what our current state was, what our needs are, and put the discipline in place to put a plan together to say, how are we going to accomplish this?
And also look at affordability, because we want to say, SAP is great. Can we afford SAP?
We may not. So
Right.
there's a balance, there's a risk of that balance and based on requirements.
All right,
And we
okay.
think we have, the team that could evolve as well. Some people float in and out, but the bottom line is it needs to be team driven with an overarching governance. So that when things come through and when we do implement, we have a process in place to ensure that we have changes being managed appropriately, not just because I like it this way. Because you're gonna touch every process in this company. People don't realize. You're changing something on the billing side, it impacts all the way through the meter department. So we need to look at this holistically. It's huge change for this organization.
What's, the number that we need to look at as far as like a budget item? How much that number?
We don't know.
We don't have a budget yet. I mean, we've got some budget estimates that we know of internally, but to press them here would be
I wouldn't say
premature, but
I'm just curious to know what number that looks like.
It can be a range, but we need to assess that. And a lot of them have different models. So it depends on what model we do. If we can do almost like a lease type of purchase, so to speak,
Like a license?
licenses.
a lot of these types of providers have gone to a service model. So you sign a contract for 5 years and it'll cost you, $250,000. I mean, not tremendously expensive to start, but you've got to commit for 5 years and it's X dollars per month. So there's a ton of different ways that they approach that pricing right now. It depends on which one.
User count, or meters, they've done it based on meters.
Yep.
Your customer levels, there's different pricing models.
What's the significance if we don't upgrade?
Billing, not supported, it breaks and we can't fix it.
Well, and also from a strategic plan point of view, you want customer self-service and things of that nature. You won't be able to do them. So those kind of activities aren't able to be done. And as we go forward, more and more, the customer information and billing systems aren't capable of doing the kind of rates that some people want to do So when you get into bidirectional power flow, you've got solar that you want to sell back in. Some of them have difficulty with the way the power or the finances will work in terms of what billing rates you can apply, what you can't, what you can see on the internet of that. And so there's some impact. You'll have to go without support and you won't be able to get upgrades. And then ultimately, cybersecurity becomes a risk then because you can't put the patches in to protect yourself. So that would be probably my biggest risk for you longer term would be cybersecurity, that there's a hack available.
Very urgent matter.
Yeah.
Just saying, it's very urgent.
And then
It
you,
is. 29 is our deadline on one of our major platforms.
Yeah, it is an urgent
It's gonna
matter.
take 3+ years to get.
and then you have the SCADA component. So we're doing major upgrades and planning for those upgrades on your electric system. You need to be able to monitor and maintain some of that as well. So it dovetails into that. And we need a system to help us to manage and monitor it. So that's critical.
Sure, I just wanted to ask, just for those who might not be techie, who might not understand, I'm just kind of.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a techie, I worked in customer service for a while at Verizon Wireless, and so I understand, I'm a little bit different on the tech side of what that looks like, for those who may not be as tech savvy, I just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
I asked the right questions for everyone to see the perspective of where we are if we don't get that technology.
And just changing business processes is huge as well.
So essentially, when we do upgrade to this new model, I guess we do have to find someone who comes in and provides training to everyone, to the entire staff, to be able to roll this out in the way that we wanted to go.
Yeah, and we've recommended, as you'll see here, this, what we call NPU Training 101 for, new hires, for onboarding, for ongoing continuous improvement, things of that nature. So you're going to have the training that the vendor provides you about how their system works, but then you also need a level of training just for how do we need it to work to do what we need for our employee, for our customers and for our employees.
Okay. Question. I know that we use SAP where I work.
Yeah.
And it tracks everything. I mean, they know how much it's supposed to take me to change a light bulb. They know how much it's gonna be to run a generator. They know how much it's gonna be to drop in a sub panel. They already have a figure, everything in their mind. And when you don't make your metrics, the control tower wrecks you out.
Right?
So, that being said, what you're looking for is a software. You may not be able to find one piece of software that can do all of this, but have one that will talk with the other ones. I mean,
Yeah, the integration, interoperability between applications is another part of what's wrong with, I say what's wrong, what you lose if you don't upgrade. The way the systems work now, there are a lot more hooks and routines built in with either standardized integration models or with standardized approaches so that you can either say, all right, this is exactly the model we're going to follow, or we're going to give you the knowledge for where everything is and you can take it however you want. And it's not that hard to build in that case. So it's becoming better, the integration and interoperability that does make things flow more simply, and that it'll improve what you have right now.
by upgrading our software, that's what we'll accomplish. Otherwise, that's kind of like trying to operate this some version ahead of time and you just get left in the.
Well, and that's where SAP is a bit of a challenge because they're a very rigid structure of their data.
There's some people that are real magicians that work that software that can do unbelievable things with it.
Right, but they're costly, and so we have to find and make sure that we understand what those costs are, because we could get it done and look at something like that, but we'll have to be careful, or,
Well, my reaction is that we buy something cheap and then we end up with so many patches that we should have bought the more expensive one right from the beginning.
penny wise and pound foolish of how you,
Exactly.
But that's where we get something that's the right product for our needs. because we're not, Raytheon. So,
No, we're not. Thank God.
And
The good news is there are,
support Raytheon.
And managing for utilities as well.
well, that's the biggest, you guys are multi-utilities.
But gas, water, sewer, and electric, and managing that it's just not an electric system. So
I
the
know, I see the
electric
customer service
nuances,
charge,
right, the
customer service charge.
electric nuances, maybe a little different.
Yes, absolutely.
Sense, especially business processes for the other things we talk about, work management tools, things of that nature. Being able to do demand management.
Well, and my partner, just did an RFP in Massachusetts for a similar utility to you. And they had 8 responses to a bid. So there are players out there that can,
Design, the architecture, the workforce.
well, and that already have. I mean, there are a lot of utilities of your size. Again, you're complicated because of the gas, water, wastewater, electric. So you're a little bit more complicated, but you're not alone. There's a market for a utility or for companies to create software like we're talking about. And not all of those 8 are going to fit, or would be, maybe none of them would be good for you, but there are players in the field that'll support you. And you're right, though, you can't be penny wise and pound foolish and say, hey, these guys were the cheapest, let's just go with them, because they sound good on paper. And that's a challenge.
And using the team approach, that is not just reports from from above, it's the input that people do on a day-to-day basis working with customers. You're getting evaluated from both sides, and we're gonna find the best product for us.
And part of our work and recommendation, and I think you'll do some of these things regardless of the partner you pick. When you do the exploration, you talk to reference accounts that are like you, and they may be here in New England, they may be in Minnesota for all I know, but there are reference accounts that you can talk to, and utility to utility conversations, they're open. I mean, another municipal in Minnesota is going to be so open with you to tell you their goods and bads. And so there's a lot of things in that exploration. It's not just talking to the vendors and being internal, but it's to talk to references to get that sense of where they stand and how well this company does. And no matter what you do with those implementations, there'll be challenges and problems. I mean, that you'll uncover how well the companies react to that and respond and correct their mistakes is a piece of it that has to be looked at for that. So it's going to be but it's a lot of work. I mean, I think that's the real message, that it's going to take a lot of work from the team here at New Orleans Public Utilities to do it right. And I encourage you to, make them do the right job and do it well over the coming years.
Yeah, this team's been meeting for 6 months, so.
Yep.
And when we do the SCADA piece, it's gonna be more operations based. We do the customer service piece, it's gonna be more Sheila and her team. Eric's gonna be more on the SCADA side, but they impact the entire utility, and it's not gonna be just customer service or just operations. It's all integrated, and IT has got to manage the backbone of whatever we do, so it's all complicated. Some may be a team of a few, and some may be a team of a large amount. Financial.
These systems are not siloed anymore. They have to be broad-based across the organization. They are, because the data is so critical from one to the other. So it's an important piece for you to follow, is to make sure that information is not siloed within groups.
And our schedule here is basically to make sure we don't burn out any resource, because you can't have too many things going on which are labor intensive for any one group. It's got to be balanced so we can implement this.
I think it would be good to keep us apprised each month of progress.
Absolutely.
I agree, Bill.
That's great.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, thank you.
The next presentation is a resolution authorizing bonding for NPUs on the electric division. Chris, and Mike and John and Matthew Swindle.
So, this is, what we have here is the city bond team.
Sure. So, you've all seen it before. So this is a new project. It's tax exempt electric revenue bonds. The good news is that if you goes forward on this, you could do it at a tax exempt rate versus a taxable rate, which will provide a significant savings. The reasons you can do it as tax exempt, on a tax exempt basis is because NPU is considered a governmental utility versus an investor-owned utility. So that's a nice benefit. I don't know, we can go to the first slide. Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about the background.
Yeah, so when we talk about electric, we have not done any major investments in our electrical grid, distribution system and transmission for a very long time. And we never had the ability to borrow money easily to do electrical upgrades. If you look at gas, we have the grant money for over $23 million coming in. Water, we have distribution, drinking water state revolving fund. Sewer, we have clean water fund. So we have revolving funds that we're bonding money or getting grant money for to do major upgrades. Not the case in electric. And it's hard to do these projects, at a reasonable clip. I can't build a substation $2 million a year for 20 years. So.
All right, so as I mentioned, NPU being a governmental utility and given particularly the electric division's financial position, there's an opportunity to pay for these capital costs through the issuance of tax exempt revenue bonds that would be supported strictly by the revenues of the electric division. Not supported by any other division, not supported by the city, strictly supported by the revenues of the electric division. The resolution that you have that I think is going to be considered later in the meeting is a resolution for NPU to issue up to $150 million of revenue bonds that would be secured by the division's electric revenue. Obviously, 150 million, there is no plan to do that all at once, like next year.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I know that these are bonds that we pay for out of our revenue. But isn't it the city that actually issues the bond?
It will be, you're correct. Technically, and under the statute, and because NPU is a department of the city, it'll be the city of Norwich issuing bonds on behalf of NPU's electric division. So there will be involvement with the city as a result, and touch on this a little later. But there will be, NPU will be a party to many agreements in the issuance, and it'll be their obligation. As I was mentioning, the plan is to approve up to $150 million of electric capital improvements that could be financed by the issuance of these bonds. The plan is to do this periodically. There is no plan to do it all at once. That would be too big of a hit to the system. As we say up here, maybe every 2 or 3 years for a period of 10 to 20 years it might take to cover all these electric improvements. Obviously, the first step from an approval process is to come to you, this board, for approval of the bond resolution. Because they're bonds, we need to go to the city council next. The plan is, if it's approved here tonight, would be to deal with city council probably in September. Because they're revenue bonds and not backed up by the general obligation, full faith and credit of the city, there's no referendum requirement. even though it's 150 million, because it's supported strictly by MPU revenues, no referendum requirement. Other approvals might be, and this would be down the road, but as MPU is looking to construct certain of these electric capital projects, it might require some sort of approval from the Commission on City Plan. Just like many projects, there is what's called the Section 824 approval, which requires city plan to comment on probably most public improvements. I mentioned no referendum, and finally, under state law, these bonds can have a term of up to 30 years. They don't have to be 30 years, they can be less, but the cap is 30 years to finance for any bond issue. Next one. Chris, I think.
Yeah, so, yeah, as I mentioned, the cost and time of the capital cannot be solely funded by cash reserves. If we said we wanted to save $70 million for that next substation, we would be doing that 10, 15 years down the road. What if there's a need for it in 3 to 5 years? We may have to kick that off sooner. And you can't afford $70 million over 3 or 4 years as well. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're doing proactive replacements of aging infrastructure and allowing growth opportunities, but minimizing the financial impact to the customers. So there's some big projects we'll get into a little later, and we got to make sure that we're minimizing that impact to the customers. Everything we do will be approved by the board in a budget, so there's going to be no surprises. And it's all, every time we're doing budgets and rate analysis, they will be included in this. By getting revenue bonds, it's leveraging those external dollars. It allows a repayment for the useful life of the asset. A substation, is probably got a useful life of north of 20, probably 40. Most of ours are, Eric, would you say 60, 80? Yeah, so that kind of puts things in perspective. And, and this allows capital investments to be completed in time to support future ready. If we have a large growth opportunity where we have to grow quickly, this gets specific capital to make that happen.
So Chris, if we do $150 million, it's going to cost us $5 million a year in interest maybe. Would these projects be maintenance projects, replacing deteriorating capital equipment that would keep us level in terms of our business operation? Or would they be provide efficiency to our operation and create new revenue?
Both. So, and it's going to be project by project, and each of these projects will be brought forward to the board. There are certain things like PTF, which you get a return on investment for transmission facilities and substations. There's a return that comes in through ISO the Wakeland. That would offset some of the costs of this revenue. If we have a significant growth opportunity for a large customer coming in, that revenue will offset the cost of this, of this capital investment. And there are certain things like we have transmission lines that are coming in, and we'll talk about those down the road, that, if we don't do something, they're going to fall and just impact reliability. Putting new transmission structures in is not going to improve efficiency. It's just going to make sure that we maintain our reliability. Okay. Next.
All right, so both myself and Matt will touch a little bit on the revenue bond issuance process. Matt and I have been working with an MPU team, primarily Laura, Brenton, and Val Kent, probably over the last year, having periodic meetings, talking about the process, talking about the projects, developing a timeline. First thing is this issuance of revenue bonds takes a team. And it starts with MPU at the top,
Obviously, as Bob mentioned, it will involve the city at some level. It will involve our firm, Pullman and Conley, as MPU's bond counsel. It will involve Matt's firm, Phoenix Advisor, as the financial advisor to MPU. We expect that Baker Tilly will probably get involved in this, providing revenue and expense projections going out, showing ample debt service coverage out in future years. Investors will probably want to see that when we issue debt. It'll also involve a bond underwriter that we still have to do a RFP for. There are underwriters out there that specialize in municipal utility type deals. There are also other underwriters that are very frequently involved in deals in Connecticut. We'll do an RFP to find the best underwriter for MPU for these deals. It will also involve what's called a bond trustee, and that is typically a bank that will act in some ways as kind of the representative for the bondholders, but it is also where debt service payments from MPU will flow into this bond trustee, who will then make payments out to the bondholders. We spent some time identifying projects, talking about budgets, talking about cash flow. As Chris mentioned, and you'll see in a later slide, we have some decent detail as far as the type of projects we're looking at. We've talked already about the approvals that will be needed, primarily this board as well as the city council. We've talked a lot about kind of the bond structure and what that involves. That's going to involve certain covenants that investors will be looking for, like a debt service coverage ratio. Whether or not the investors will want what's called a debt service reserve fund, which is basically an account with cash sitting in it that's invested, but sits there for the protection of the bond owners, so that if a debt service payment is late or not made, they can take money from that pool and kind of give them an early warning as to what's going on. Obviously, our plan is never to use that, but it's something that investors might require. There's also something called bond insurance, which is getting another well-funded, well-capitalized third-party entity. There's, I think, 2 of them out there now that basically guarantees the payment of debt service. Again, this will all develop as we get further along, and really, once we engage an underwriter to get a sense as to what the market's going to want to see from an entity like MPU issuing electric revenue bonds. The bond issue itself includes a number of kind of what I would consider core bond documents. Probably the most critical is what's known in the industry as an official statement, but it's an offering memorandum or a disclosure document. It'll talk about MPU, it'll talk about the electric division, it will include audited financials of the electric division, it will include probably some sort of report, likely from Baker Tilly, projecting out to the future to give bondholders some level of comfort that there's sufficient cash to repay this debt. There will be a trust indenture, which is effectively the agreement between NPU and the bondholders as far as payments, covenants, different things like that. There will be a bond purchase agreement that will be between the underwriter and NPU. It's the underwriter's agreement to purchase the bonds at a certain price. And there will also be what's called a continuing disclosure agreement, which is an SEC requirement, which now requires governmental issuers to provide kind of annual periodic information over the life of the bonds. So that will all be part of the process, kind of going forward. It's a process that investors are used to seeing, that underwriters are used to seeing, something we can deal with going forward. Matt, being the financial advisor, is going to touch a little bit about kind of the marketing and the sale of the bonds.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So again, nice to be here this evening. As Mike indicated, as Pullman is bond counsel, and they're handling really all the legal documentation and that sort of thing, sort of earlier in the process. As we move along, we actually get to the point where we're getting closer to doing the bond sale, and we're looking at marketing the bonds. We'd be working very closely with, the underwriter, obviously through the RFP process, but the underwriter, making sure that, we have everything we need, they have what they need to properly market the bonds, what the investors are going to want to see, not only in the official statement, which is kind of the document that we sort of run point on in terms of making sure that that is up to date as necessary through best practices with disclosure, but also if there's an investor roadshow that we want to put together to some of the bigger funds that might be interested in purchasing the issuance. Also, a huge process and a very important part of this. We'll talk a little bit more about specifically the time frame in a couple more slides, but in terms of getting the bond rating, NPU's never done a bond issue, so it's like the initial first time through for everything. But the bond rating obviously being a very important thing, obviously, which is very similar when we do, City of Norwich or City of Stamford or what have you. So working with, whether it's one agency or two, and what the thing that they want to work on, want to hear about, working with Chris and the finance group in terms of really putting the best foot forward so that we can obtain the highest credit rating that we can for this issuance. Because again, this isn't, a GO full faith municipal bond, tax exempt, that sort of is done every day. There's a lot more nuance and complexity to this. So that's a big part of the process. And then ultimately, once we get that rating and we have the underwriter selected and we call out to the market and actually price these bonds and sell them to the investors who ultimately hold the bonds. And that again is through the underwriter and making sure that they're priced appropriately based on comps and industry sort of guidelines and things of that nature, to then ultimately closing the bonds, which is when the NPU actually get the funds for this project. So that's kind of the process. We'll talk a little bit about timeline later, but that's sort of the marketing and sale of bonds. And then ultimately, obviously, after we do close, there'll be an investment of bond proceeds, making sure that those are all appropriate with Mike. But of course, those funds will be paying for projects that'll be ongoing over the course of that next year to year and a half. Ultimately, also ensuring that through one of the main things Mike mentioned in terms of documentation is the continuing disclosure documents, meaning once you issue bonds now in the market, you have annual requirements that investors will need to see. Audit report, timely audit reports, if there's a rating change, things of that nature, and we work with NP with that. And then obviously any covenant compliance, like I mentioned, the bond covenants. So there's a lot of those things that just are happening sort of behind the scenes. But with that being said, I think we go to the next slide, and I think it goes back to Chris.
Yeah, so, we really need to do some significant investment in our electric system to meet the high standards of reliability that we have provided our customers, and also allowing us to meet future demand. We want to be future ready. We want to make sure that as we're starting to see electric loads starting to grow, and we expect them to grow into the future, we're working to define what those growth requirements are. We need to be able to meet them. It's big for being future ready. Also, want to make sure we're meeting all the safety standards for the public and our employees. We have a lot of old equipment that may not be exactly how you would design it today. That should be replaced in some of our substations and some of our areas. Continue to meet regulatory requirements, including all of the rigorous NERC SIP requirements that handle the SCADA and physical requirements going forward. Use enhanced technologies, better relays, better control, the ability to use, manage distributed generation on our system, and also making sure that we are doing this in the most cost-effective manner. So that's all got to take into consideration as we go forward with these projects. Next. Right, so just kind of in a nutshell, substations. Bean Hill relocation is key. We know we've had flood issues there. That is something that we are, really need to have a new substation in a better location. There are transformers, relays, circuit breakers, and breaker buses on some other stations that need to get improved as well. We've been talking about the 34.5 rating bus for quite some time. That's the connection between our three substations to allow reliability, redundancy, and allow distributed generation anywhere in our system. But there were also some upgrades that need to be done on transformers, poles, distribution lines, and services. So this allows us to do things in packages. Our transmission lines, these are going to be some of the things that we're going to be doing up front. These are the transmission lines that need new structures, need new wire, because they were put in 80 years ago. So we have to do some rebuilding on that. And then when you look at some of the other items that can be also included, improved maintenance facilities. We've got $500,000 bucket trucks sitting outside 24/7. Hydro structures, the canal and the hydro controls, all could use some upgrades. So these are the types of projects we're seeing in our 10-year capital plan. We're not going to do every one of these projects, but this is the type of work that we need to look at, and it will be evaluated every year in the budget and with the board approval before moving forward.
That's with 150 million.
This is 150 million.
Sense? That's the math, huh?
All right, so.
And then, again, that last slide was pretty important from the perspective of the actual dollar amount and what the projects or the dollars are going towards. But just from the perspective of the timeline, and this is specific to, would be the first bond issuance for NPU. Whether that's $10 million or whatever that number ends up being, assuming we're working towards that, we have obviously, like now, basically, unfortunately, summer's over, it appears, is for the board and city council approval. And then as we move out the next 1 to 3 months, we have the bond document preparation, which is like the official statement that we talked about, working with the district to get those things up to date. The feasibility report that was mentioned earlier, with the revenue projections and so on. And then ultimately, underwriter and trustee RFPs probably towards the end of that 1 to 3 month period, starting to get that lined up. After that, once we get the team sort of evaluated and on board, then that's when we start to talk about the rating calls and putting those presentations together and, finalizing official statements and things like that, and ultimately applying and getting the rating. So once those things are then all done, again, we're 6 to 9 months away from that at this point, this last slide, but underwriting is going to need to do a due diligence call with the city, with the NPU, which is kind of like a rating call, but with the underwriter, just in terms of getting all their information that they're going to need. We get the rating, whatever investor presentations, and pricing, and all those things we talked about a little bit earlier, but that's when, ultimately it ends with the city, with the NPU getting the funding for the projects. And, again, along those lines is, along that time period, we're going to be fine tuning the size, fine tuning the structure, what's the term, are we 20 years, are we 25 or 30 years, interest rates and all those kinds of things will be done. And really crunch time is that 6 to 9 months bullet at the end there. So that's just a loose timeline of sort of what to expect from this process. And there's one more slide.
All right, so, we need these revenue bonds to support the necessary and transformational investments we need to make in our system. Right now, we are balancing aging infrastructure and load growth and the ability to bring more tax revenue and utility revenue to the city. All those things are what we need to have this available for. We need critical upgrades to enhance and improve our reliability and efficiency and support the financial and operational growth. And it's really the down payment for the future of NPU. Questions for the team?
What's the probability that the bond process works or doesn't work for MPU? Is there like a chance that it might not happen, or is there a chance that it will happen, based on your expertise?
Yeah, I mean, from a legal perspective, I think you could answer that, and then I could take it from financial. I'll just, since I'm already talking, I would think, just based on everything I've seen and based on our experience, I've been doing this for 20, a long time.
Sure.
I don't foresee there being, outside of something happening between now and then that none of us could foresee, this should be a very straightforward process. From the process of acquiring the funding. There's so much more that goes into it than I touch. But the parts that I touch, I have no, concerns of it going the way we plan it to go. But and then
Yeah, and then legally, we get really the approval from this board and city council. We are kind of on our way from a local approval standpoint. And just to reiterate what Matt said, I mean, municipal electric utility bonds are pretty common. They're out there. There are a lot of utilities that issue these. There are a lot of investors that are interested in these. There are a lot of underwriters that know the investors that are doing these. But I will tell you, and just take this with a grain of salt, that there is always an interest rate that you can sell your bonds at. But what we want to make sure is we get the best rate and a rate that makes sense for MPU. So, but I'm very confident that this will happen and go forward.
Do you think the city will have any issues with it?
I plan to be there. I will reiterate to them that, they are not on the hook for anything. I mean, in fact, I was talking with Laura yesterday. One of her questions is, well, what happens if we don't make the debt service? Are they on the hook? And the answer is no. And I will make that clear. I can't see the city having any issues. It doesn't affect, in Connecticut, there's a state law that puts some limits on how much debt a municipality can issue, but there's an exception for revenue bonds, so it doesn't affect their debt capacity. There's no obligation for them to pay. I don't see any issue. I mean, let's be honest, the only thing that might come up if we're getting close to the political season, obviously by issuing debt, you're going to need the revenue to pay for that debt. So maybe rates go up a little bit. Is the council worried about rates for voters, for residents of the city of Norwich?
You called these tax exempt revenue bonds. What is the significance of the tax exempt?
Tax exempt, that means when these bonds are sold, the investors that purchase them, the interest they receive is exempt from federal income tax. And if they happen to be a Connecticut resident or a Connecticut entity that owns them, they're also exempt from Connecticut. So that's it. Yeah.
These projects have been talked about for years. So we were always planning on doing some sort of bond or something, right?
Yes.
So the state just gave us the money.
So we went and looked, we went and looked at that private financing, going through CMET, going through the GO.
Yeah.
And as the team came up, as this was the most effective tool to bond these projects. And if you want to go into any details of that, Mike, feel free.
I just want to mention one more thing about the taxable versus tax exempt, and it all depends on market conditions, it depends on taxable and tax exempt ratios, so on and so forth. But I think as far as, when you look at getting the best interest rate possible, that's probably the big, ratings are obviously very important too. There's a lot of things that are important, but the taxable versus tax exempt is like probably the biggest component of it, because, let's just, for round numbers, let's say you do a 20-year issue and, it's a 4% interest rate, tax exempt. If it was taxable, I mean, that's at least 100 basis points higher by right now. And if you were to, run that out over the course of the, 10 years worth of bonding at 150 million is huge. So the fact that they're tax exempt is really, and that's what I'd say probably of local governments, authorities, specifically in Connecticut, you're probably talking about 90% of those are going to be tax exempt. So it's definitely, the market's great, the demand is really, really high, so it's very important.
Yeah, hold on one second. Jerry, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I can't speak for all councils, but when I sat on the council, typically when matters came before me, the presentation was presented in a way that all the questions could be answered. Was to understand answers to the questions. So members, it usually wasn't about the ballot to get things approved from the council, is what I'm trying to say. As long as you have everything, I know when I was on the council, I kicked stuff back because I wasn't enough information. Next agenda. So typically, I can't speak for every time and every council, but typically, that's what happens.
And Mike, can you just go over just kind of how we came up to the revenue bonds?
Yeah, we looked at a number of different options, and probably at the end of the day, it got down to either these revenue bonds that we're talking about today, or the possibility of the city issuing general obligation. And if the city issued GO bonds, the rate would be less than these revenue bonds. They'll be close, but the GO rate would be less. The problem with GO is there's a number of issues. First of all, you would have to go to referendum, so that goes to the voters. $150 million would be a lot to swallow. Second, it then would affect the city's debt capacity going forward. Third, I think by doing revenue bonds, it allows MPU to have more control of the process than the city issuing GO bonds. Even in the case, and I think MPU did this in the past with gas bond, where the city issues GO debt, and basically MPU promises to repay the city for the debt service, which would probably be the same structure. But I think at the end of the day, we felt that the revenue bond approach was the best approach. I think in some ways, going through the process of having MPU get a rating, at least for the electric division, will help going forward, and it's a good process. So that's kind of where we ended up and why we're here talking about it.
Chris, does any of this bond financing reduce the option of us getting federal or state money for some of the projects we're talking about? For example, we've talked about getting federal funds or state funds for the 34-5 substations sometime, whether it's money from a congressman or whatever.
So essentially, that ship has sailed as far as those projects. And one of the big legislative updates in the NEPA meeting was how the government is now clawing back that money and making it pretty much impossible to use that money in the DOE. So that was not a high probability anyways. It wasn't like gas where it was just a win-win all around. And that money's here to stay. So this won't preclude us from getting any of the funds. We just bond less money. So, but, if we're gonna wait for that next opportunity for grants, they didn't. They were looking at big, large projects, but not the municipal world. There was carved out for 4 municipals of the 2,000 municipals in the country. That was, we could have played, maybe the state lottery, not the Mega Millions for the odds, but it was still long odds to get that money. Not like, dedicated work we did in gas, sewer, and water, where we put a good product out, we were getting money. In electric, we probably put out name paper and it didn't get read.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the last presentation is an update on the gas construction vehicle. We'll make sure it's brief.
There's a lot of material tonight.
Yeah, there was a lot to digest. Good evening. Just a quick update on the 2022 gas grant. If you recall that this project basically has 3 phases, the first one being the Asylum Street project. So I'm happy to report that all of our mains and services have been installed on Asylum Street. In the next few weeks, we're going to be tying in all the side streets that funnel into that new main, and we'll do full pavement restoration in October, which will complete that phase of the project 100%. The second phase is the NFA project area, and we've actually sort of chunked this into 2 to be cognizant of NFA starting up. So we broke this up into Crescent and Rockwell as one of the phases, McKinley and Franklin on the other. Happy to report that we've 100% completed the Crescent and Rockwell portion yesterday. Freshman report tomorrow, and the rest of the school on Thursday. So made it by 24 hours. That was a good deal. On Franklin and McKinley, the main is installed, and we have about 2 more weeks of services. Then we proceed to tying in those side streets as well, which will occur sometime in September. Probably looking at a permanent road patch this year, and then final milling and paving next year, but that's to be determined. If we get a mild November, that could change. And then finally, the North Main Street project. We do have a main installed from about 8th Street to Burnham Square. Services and side street tie-ins are going to sort of commence in late September. We do have a meeting with the DOT scheduled for tomorrow to see what restrictions they're going to put on late fall paving operations. They typically have a soft deadline of November 1st. So we're going to take their temperature tomorrow and see where we go for North Main Street. We're still on target to be completed by next summer, June, July timeframe. And in terms of the 2023 grant, which is for an additional $10.9 million to do another 4.5 miles of street, not much change there. I think last time I was before you, we had received our final approval, so we can start expending dollars on the design, which we'll do over the winter. No capacity to really do that right now with the 2022 grant going full speed ahead. And construction expected to take place over 3 years, 2027 through 2030. So yeah, that's about it. Everything's going fairly well.
Good contractor, good team internal to support it.
Couple of streets.
Questions? All right, thank you, Jerry.
Is there a motion to approve the regarding sewer rates as presented this evening?
Can wait a while, can do it tonight. Well, that's at the board's discretion.
I mean, the fact that we had no one come here or voice their concerns, I'm wondering if we wait another month and maybe put something, Chris, I don't know if you could communicate, the proposal on the webpage, on Facebook or whatever.
It is quick to do and it's free. We can do it a couple of times in September. I think we would wait until after Labor Day when people would be more likely to be paying attention. It's certainly easy to do, and it is going to reach, a couple of thousand probably, but $10 behind it pushes out a little faster. Something that we could do Tuesday morning quickly and easily, and we do it once a week between Labor Day and the next board meeting if you'd like.
I don't know. I'm.
Well, if we did that and if members of the public came next month and voiced disapproval of the rate, what would we do?
Listen to the people.
Okay.
I mean, there's only 8,000 people who pay for it.
We're legally mandated to do the sewer project by the state. Unless you want to chip in. You don't have any options.
The problem is that they're not from stone.
What do you say, Bob?
I don't see how we can not do it.
Now do it now or vote on the next meeting?
I don't think it matters.
I think, we should just vote on tonight. We've talked about it for months. We know the situation. There's not much we can do about it. have to be paid for, so.
Jerry?
I don't know, my neighbors are the ones who live that are gonna pay for this. We're the poorest of the poor. I don't live in the fancy neighborhoods. You know, we have city water, city sewer. And, we had a 49% tax increase, got a school coming up, got, police station. All of these things are adding up. So it's gonna be a bit of, I know we can't let our house fall on top of each other, you know, let it rot to hell. But where's the balance here? Is there any balance here? Or our hands just tied that we just have to be rubber stamps for anything that comes along here? And I have a problem.
So your strategy is to say that we should push it out a little bit as opposed to just saying that it just needs to be done regardless. Is that what you're saying?
I think that you should give the public every opportunity to weigh in on this. And also, there's a Norwich Community Forum page on Facebook.
As much education as it is fact.
I understand that, but when the raving lunatics come out, that's where they come out.
Exactly, and that's not necessarily in anyone's best interest. Our Facebook page gets responses and criticisms, and that's all well and good, but it's a little more measured. That crowd, that audience is.
Yeah, they're pretty rough.
And
They're a pretty rough crowd. You're
and
absolutely
it's
right.
not, it's where we have not engaged.
We can't control the message and we can't really respond very well in that.
If someone puts something on our response to us that's egregious, we can delete it and hide it. That's not the case when it's out there, and those things, when people say something out,
Oh, yeah,
it snowballs, and then
Yeah.
it gets off, so that's, in effect, to put something on our own page, we can control.
So what other avenues do we have to reach out to the public besides the NPU?
This is not the first, this is the third year in a row that we've done this, and we've talked about it and done things on our, in our newsletters, we've done them on Facebook, and there's not an interest.
And there's been a lot of news articles on the plant, the cost of the plant. It's been in front of us and the council.
I just know that neighbors ain't gonna be happy. That's all I'm worth. They're just not gonna be happy. Because the people, the other, number one, number two, the landlords are not gonna be happy, because they're the ones, the tenants ain't gonna come here to these meetings. Landlords, most of them, just property owners, so they're gonna be forced to raise their rents. Again, where everybody says, no, which isn't affordable, this and that, and we have more people on public assistance.
Well, respectfully, Jerry, is that we're talking about the sewer rates in this particular situation. So it could be, I mean, we're not talking about a significant increase in regards to electricity, just more so the sewer rates. So we can make sure that we're comparing apples to apples to know exactly what we're facing. And I guess the strategy is that when it comes to sewer, it's not gonna be a significant increase in regards,
It's $16 a month.
you know,
For the average.
we're talking about 16, not 160. So I just want to make sure that everyone's well informed when it comes to that, and say that, is it worth to do the $16 now, or should we wait till September? I think I just want to make sure that we get that clear, so we can have, you know, the message we put out there, whatever you're saying.
And not approving the rates would then put the state funding at risk, because we're on hook for this regardless.
Yeah, if you do, damn if you don't.
We have loan covenants we have to meet.
And there are only 8,000 people that are paying this.
This is essentially the state of Connecticut. I mean, and I think the project is probably needed, but the state of Connecticut has required that we do it. They're legally mandated that we have to do the project.
Yeah.
The project's gonna cost $200 million. They're putting in 35%. We have to come up with the money somewhere else. If we don't, we're.
Well, I mandate, we'll look funding for something else probably in the future.
Yeah.
It's a 1972 plant designed for 20 years. That's been running since 1972.
Hold on one second, what did you say?
I said, I believe we'll get fined if we don't,
Meet
that we
potentially considering
we have a consent agreement that they're letting us essentially violate, emissions with the knowledge that we're building a new plant. And if we were building a new plant, then it'd be a whole different consent agreement,
So,
I believe.
We kicked the can down the road for 20, 25 years. Too long.
I guess it's time to pay the piper.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Is that the consensus that I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Is that it's time to pay the piper? Yes, no, yes,
It is.
all right.
So I think the options are, you can vote on tonight, or we put information again out on the NPU website and vote next month without really able to make a significant change.
Well, I guess respectfully, then, how close are we, if we push it off the next month, how close are we to hitting that deadline that we could cause some issues?
If we can make it if we push it off to the next month.
There's no benefits waiting.
All right.
There's no, it's not gonna save anybody any money by waiting a month. It's not gonna change the financial obligation of the state. There's no, it's yes or no, regardless of when.
All right, then.
Rates go into effect November.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do we want to vote tonight?
No.
Or do we want to piss off a bunch of people and have them come and yell at us and then vote?
I'm not gonna, I mean,
Last year. Last year, and nobody came and yelled at the board after we put this in place.
Wow, I wasn't laughing at you, sorry. Okay, I'm just saying,
No,
yeah, I got you. I'm gonna be respectful to what you said, sorry.
I'll make a motion then to approve.
So we have a motion made by Bill, second by Stu. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Jerry's about.
Oh, Jerry's opposed, sorry. Jerry opposed.
No extensions.
No abstentions. And the motion passes. To have sewer rates presented and increased on tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve, moving on right along, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing MPU to continue the process of securing revenue bonding for the electric division as presented this evening?
That would be the resolution provided in the board package.
Or
I'll make that motion.
motion made by Stu Peel, anyone second? Bob Staley seconds the motion made by Stu Peel. Any discussions? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes to approve the resolution authorizing the NPU to continue the process of securing revenue bonding. Okay. That brings us to executive session. We have a few motions that we need to go for. So there is a motion to approve the steelworkers contract as presented tonight. Anybody like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion.
Jerry makes the motion, seconded by Bob. Did I catch it right? Or Bob first and second Jerry?
Doesn't matter.
All right, then Bob first, second Jerry. Here we go. Any discussion on the steelworkers contract? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes to approve the steelworkers contract presented tonight by Crystal Rose. Is there a motion to authorize the general manager to negotiate based on property? The property,
that 300,000 property.
no purchases, we made, you know, just look for.
No numbers.
No numbers. Negotiations based on the approval of the appraisal.
Yeah, he can talk.
You have permission to talk, Chris. So with that being said, Jerry, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Great. Who seconded it? Bob seconds it.
All right.
Any discussions about this negotiation? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes for the general manager to negotiate with the property 119. Right?
No, Main Street.
No, Main Street. Okay. Is there any other business that we need to consider before we let Simone go? Anything else? Well, That being
Bill
said,
needs a Diet Coke.
So now go back into executive session.
yes.